Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this picture. There are lots of ways to make a picture more interesting. In this image it's the multitude of bubbles and the interplay of the light that makes all the difference. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Okay, so to do this you're going to need a few things. First of which is going to be a very small fish tank. Now this one I found on the internet, has a capacity of about 4 litres and it's made from acrylic. So you do have to be careful you don't scratch it. So to mount that I'm just going to use a couple of pieces of wood. So I'm just going to place those on the table here, something like that. I'll just place a little black cloth over the top of that. There we are, just to stop any reflections. Then we can just pop that on there. Okay. And what I'm going to do to actually create the bubbles is to use sparkling water. Pour that into the tank. There we are. So that's relatively full. There. So that's going to form the environment that we're going to put the subject in. Now the subject in this case is going to be a strawberry. But we'll just put that to one side for 1 second because you're going to need a few other things. The first thing is that if you put a strawberry in any type of water, it's going to float. So I need a way to make sure that it doesn't float, that I can actually position it in the tank properly. So what I'm going to do is use a small piece of welding rod which I've bent into this sort of shape so I can mount the strawberry on it. I've also painted the back part of it with black paint just to make it easier when we come to do the retouching. Okay, so we just pierce the strawberry onto the rod. Now I've pierced it fairly low down, so hopefully when I put it in the water here it will rotate and turn the other way up. There we go. Pop that on there like that. Okay, so now we've got the strawberry in the tank and we've got bubbles absolutely everywhere. So the other thing you're going to need is a way to get rid of some of those. So I've got another piece of welding rod here which I've just bent and I can use this just to take the bubbles off the front of the tank, like so. And also do the same thing at the back, on the back of the tank. Okay, more of that later when we're ready to start taking any pictures. Okay, so that's part of the setup. The next thing to do would be to think about how this is going to be lit. So in order to bring out the maximum amount of contrast, I'm going to actually light it from the side. And I'm going to use just a small studio head. This is about 250 joules. I'm just going to place that on the table about there. So it's just illuminating the side of the tank. Okay, so for the actual setup, that's it. Next thing to do would be to position the camera on the tripod at the front there. So for the camera I'm using this medium format camera with a 120mm macro lens on the front of it. So if you're using a full frame format camera, the equivalent would be about a 70mm macro lens. And the camera is tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to follow along and see the results as I get them. Okay, so I'll just pop this on the tripod. There we are. Just pop up the finder, I'll turn the camera on, and with that you can see that the software has recognized the camera, and these are the settings that I have on the camera at the moment. So it's in full manual mode. I have a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second. Now that's the flash sync speed for this particular camera. Yours may vary. ISO 100. And I've got an aperture set at the moment of f/16. Now that will give me a reasonable depth of field at this sort of distance, but I may well need to change that. But we'll leave it as it is for the time being. Okay, So the next thing to do would be just to focus that up. So with a waist level finder, I can just look down the finder here and I'll focus up the image. So about there somewhere, I think, for the time being. Okay, so with that set, what I can do now is just do a little experiment just to make sure I don't get any contamination from the house lights at those settings. So what I'll do is just grab an image with no flash just to make sure I get a black image. So I can do that from the software here. And there you are, you can see at those settings I've got no image at all. So with that I can now turn on the flash and we'll just grab an image at an arbitrary energy level just to see what sort of exposure we get. And there we are. So straight away we're getting something fairly reasonable. I think I'd like to just look at the focus point. So what I'm going to do to start with is just go and zoom all the way into 100%. Now I can pan around the image a little and we can just check the focus. And we can see that that's easily sharp enough. You can also see that you're getting a nice highlight in each of the bubbles, which is sort of what I want. But to make the highlights just a bit bigger, what I'm going to do is just use a card reflector. And I'm just going to place this just at the back here, just up against the light, like that. There we are. And I've got another one which I'm going to place at the front. Okay, so with those in place, I'll grab another image and we'll see what we get this time. And there, now that's much more like the sort of thing I want. You can easily see the difference. That's what we had before, and this is what I've got now. So we've got, yes, a bit more exposure, but also, if we zoom in again, you'll see that all the highlights are considerably bigger, which is just what I want. And the other thing to notice about this is that the background is completely black. Now I haven't got anything at the back here to form a background. What is actually happening is, due to the inverse square law, this is being lit properly. So by the time you get back to about here somewhere, the light has fallen off to such a degree that you end up with a black background. So the next thing to do would just be to manage some of the bubbles that are around this. So what I'm going to do is use that small piece of metal that we had before. I'm just going to take the bubbles off the front and the back of the tank. There we are. So before they form again, I'll just grab another image and we'll see what it looks like now. There, they are still there, but they're a lot smaller than they were before. That's what we had before, and that's what I've got now. So it's worth doing that a few times, just so that you get a few variations to take forward into post-processing. Okay, so with those images now captured, the next stage would be to pick the best of those and go into Photoshop and do the post-processing. So here we are in Photoshop, and I've loaded up 3 of the variants of the images that I captured earlier. So I've got this one, and this one, and this one. And of all of those, I actually like the first one, which was one of the earlier ones that we captured. And I quite like this because it's got some nice bubbles in the background which I want to use. So I can now dispense with the other ones, and this is the one that I'll be going forward with. But I don't want to edit the camera original. I want to edit a copy. So the way that I usually do that is just to go on the background layer here, right click the mouse, ask for a duplicate layer, but ask for a new document. And we'll just call it Strawberry Bubbles, and click on OK. So I've got this new file at the top here, Strawberry Bubbles. I can now shut down the camera original. I've always got that to go back to. So this is what I'll be editing. Right, so I think the first thing that I'd like to do is just to clean up the image ever so slightly. There's a few bubbles in here which I really don't want. So what I'm going to do is zoom into the picture, and I think I'm just going to use the clone tool just to take out the odd bubble that I don't want. So I'll set the size and the hardness. Now there's lots of different ways that you could do this, but doing it with a clone tool gives you a lot of control. Go on to a blank space, just holding down the Option command. I'll take a sample from there. There we are. Now if I were to do this on this layer, I'd have no way of easily going back. So just for redundancy, what I'm going to do before I do that is just go onto the background layer here, right click the mouse and just ask for a duplicate layer again. And this time it'll just make me a background copy. So it's the copy that I will be editing. Okay, so with those parameters set, I just go through and I'll just take out the bits that I don't want. Okay, so if I just fit that to the screen again, just turn that layer on and off, you can see the difference I've made. And you can keep going to your heart's content on that really, but I'm just going to leave it at that for now. And the next thing I'm going to do is just apply a crop. Now as I'm using this for video, I'm using a specific ratio of 16:9. So what I'm going to do is just tighten this around the strawberry and maybe center it up a little, like that. There we are. And there we have it. So by using carbonated water or sparkling water, I've been able to get lots of bubbles to attract themselves to this strawberry. And it really changes the way that the whole thing looks. And I think it makes for an interesting picture. Okay, well I hope you liked watching how I made that image, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.